guess we'll figure that out later. Shalom, shalom. Welcome back to another World History Wednesday class. Today we'll be going into the Egyptian Captivity. Let's first and foremost, let's go to Exodus 1. We'll just jump straight into it. Let's go to Exodus chapter 1.
Sure. You want me to call you? Oh, no, you got it. Book of Exodus chapter 1 and verse 1. Now these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin. Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already.
So here's just a little backstory on us getting into the land of Egypt, right? So read on.
Verse 6. And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation. And the children of Israel were fruitful, and increased abundantly, and multiplied, and waxed exceeding mighty, and the land was filled with them.
So we see here that Israel was a flourishing nation at the time, a flourishing people at the time. Let's go to Genesis 47. And it's telling you that Joseph was already in Egypt. All of his brothers and his father came, and they had their kids and so on. So it said Joseph, his brothers, Joseph and his brothers and their children, that particular generation had passed away. And we're generations down the line at this point. And Israel is flourishing in Egypt right now. Let's go to Genesis 47, and we'll start at verse 1. We're going to read down to 6.
The book of Genesis chapter 47 and verse 1. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh and said, My father and my brethren, and their flocks, and their herds, and all that they have are come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen.
So, just a quick, summary of it. Joseph was sold, for those that don't know, Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers to, who was it at the time? Because he got sold twice.
Man, I forgot his name, but it was a cat that basically was almost like a general. He got sold into his house.
Yeah, well, no, he got sold prior to that, and then he ended up over there with Potiphar.
Man, I forgot what his name
but basically, Joseph was sold, and he rose from a slave or a servant, from a prisoner, to the right-hand man. And then he went back to jail. And then he became a prisoner again. He was a, he was a reader of dreams. So he was able to, he was able to interpret dreams. And through his interpretation of the dreams, he gained favor with the Pharaoh at that time. And when he gained favor with that Pharaoh by giving him first interpreting his dream, then giving him wise counsel, he made him his right-hand man. He made him his governor. And one of the dreams was that all of the land would be 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. So then he gave him wise counsel, saying, well, during the 7 years of plenty, let's make sure we storing up. Let's not just be frivolous with everything. And sure enough, the 7 years of famine followed right behind it. And it just so happened that in the land of Canaan, or what we consider Israel today, there was a famine. And so Jacob heard that Egypt had resources. So he sent his sons over there. They find out, well, they don't find out initially, but eventually they find out that, our brother is the governor here, or the right-hand man here, or the right hand to the Pharaoh here. And so he brings Israel in, he brings his people in, and he places them in the land of Goshen. Goshen being, as we'll see in a minute, was pretty much the most desired area of Egypt at that time. It was the most, what's the word? It was the most sought out, but it produced the best agriculture. It was the most It was the most fruitful, but there's a specific word that I'm looking for, and I'm upset that I can't think about it right now. But all that to say, it was a place that was very well, I guess, established as far as agriculture was concerned. And that's why Joseph wanted his people to be over there, because he knew there were goat herders or sheep herders. And we had a lot of flock, and it would be very beneficial for our flock because it was a lot of greenery right there, because that's where the Mediterranean runs into the land, into these various different streams or these different rivers. So it was literally the most water, the best area for agriculture and so on. But let's read on. Let's read.
Finish up verse 2.
Yeah, what are we at? Verse 2?
Yeah.
Read verse 2.
Verse 2. And he took some of his brethren, even 5 men, and presented them unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto his brethren, What is your occupation? And they said unto Pharaoh, Thy servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. They said moreover unto Pharaoh, For to sojourn in the land are we come. For thy servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is sore in the land of Canaan. Now therefore we pray thee, let thy servants dwell in the land of Goshen. And Pharaoh spake unto Joseph, saying, Thy father and thy brethren are come unto thee. The land of Egypt is before thee. And the best of the land make thy father and brethren to dwell. And the land of Goshen let them dwell. And if thou knowest any men of activity among them, then make them rulers over my cattle.
So Pharaoh had actually met Jacob. He met Joseph's father, and he said, damn, this is a wise man. I can see, I get it now. You know, as they say, the apple don't fall too far from the tree. Okay. So then he brought a couple of his brothers, a couple of his kinsmen, and he said, what do y'all do? And they told Pharaoh, we just shepherds. You know, we keep the sheep, we keep the flock. And he said, all right, cool. And so he said, you know what? I'm going to let y'all, because Joseph had already told Pharaoh, hey, I put my folks, I put them over there in Goshen. So then he ended up talking to a few of them. And he said, y'all good? Hope y'all cool then over there. If that's where y'all want to be, cool. Goshen is cool with me, right? Let's see. That's what I wanted to pull up.
It's not going to open up.
There it goes. No, it was because it was on the laser.
Oh, okay, my bad.
So let's see what Goshen was and where was it at the time. Yash, if I'm not on the PowerPoint, you can bring me to the PowerPoint. So this is from the National Geographic. I ain't going to force you to read that because you kind of over there.
Yeah, I think I can see it, though.
You good?
Yeah, I think I got it.
Okay. Let me see where I want to start at.
If I'm struggling too much, just take over for me.
We can start from the top.
All right. This is from National Geographic, Nile River. Let me just ease that down. The Nile River flows over 6,600 kilometers, or 4,100 miles, until emptying into the Mediterranean Sea. For thousands of years, the river has provided a source of irrigation to transform the dry area around it into lush agricultural land. Today, the river continues to serve as a source of irrigation, as well as an important transportation and trade route.
So the land of Goshen was in the same exact area as the Nile River. It was pretty much synonymous. So it's expressing the value of Goshen at the time. It was the most irrigated. It was what do you call it? It was the area. Actually, let me read it up here so I don't butcher it. It said, here it is. It said it was important for transportation and trade routes. So when people were making trades and whatnot, they would come to the coast of the northern area of Egypt, which was right there at the tip of the Nile River. And this was the area that was, again, the most beneficial in Egypt. And that's why Joseph was trying to place us there, which is where we ended up being. Let's read down. There was one particular part that I wanted. this what I wanted? Yeah. We'll just read these next two paragraphs. The Nile River was an ideal growing location. Yeah, start here. The soil of the Nile Delta.
All right. The soil of the Nile River Delta began El Kahira or Cairo, and the Mediterranean Sea is rich in nutrients due to the large silt deposits the Nile leaves behind as it flows into the sea. The banks of the Nile all along its vast length contain rich soil as well, thanks to annual flooding that deposits silt. From space, the contrast between the Nile's lush green river banks and the barren desert through which it flows is obvious. Mm-hmm. For millennia, much of Egypt's food has been cultivated in the Nile Delta region. Ancient Egyptians developed irrigation methods to increase the amount of land they could use for crops and support a thriving population. Beans, cotton, wheat, and flax were important and abundant crops that could be easily stored and traded.
So it said, where are you? I think it was in the second paragraph. No, here it is. It says, the banks of the Nile all along its vast length contain rich soil as well, thanks to the annual flooding and deposits of silt. Here it is. From space, so when they look at the satellite images, it says the contrast between the Nile's lush green riverbanks and the barren desert through which it flows is obvious. So when you look at what they call satellite pictures of Goshen or of the Nile Delta, because it's the same place, you can see that all of Egypt was pretty much brown. It was a desert. But Goshen was green. Goshen was lush. So Joseph had to finesse his way to get Israel in there. He said, hey, don't even sweat it. Y'all gonna stay over here. I'm gonna go talk to Pharaoh. That's already my boy. Don't trip. So this is how we ended up even flourishing, because we had all of the resources. We had the resources to continue to, I don't want to say grow, to continue to take care of our cattle. We had all the resources to grow food and agriculture. We were able to trade and excuse me. That one threw me off. We were able to trade all of those things, and we were right there on the coast where all of the, trades, even to this day, out there in that land, that is still the most prominent part, especially in northern Africa and especially in Egypt, where a lot of trades and transportation for trades occur. So that was like the most ideal spot to be in if you were living in Egypt.
And one thing to look at it in modern times is no different than the Panama Canal, right? With all these different imports and exports coming in and out. That's basically what Goshen was to a certain degree. You had this hub, if you will, this area where all of these transports and trades were happening, and it allowed our people to continue to thrive, cultivate new practices and trades, and be able to grow in the manner in which we were able to.
So if you look, if you look at, this is actually from the Bible Atlas, the Rose Bible Atlas, and I took a picture out of my atlas actually. So you can actually see the difference between the rest of Egypt, which is pretty much all desert, and then the Nile Delta, the river that leads into the Mediterranean Sea, and all of this area was pretty much considered Goshen. And you can see how green it is, how lush it is, how it would be beneficial for us to be there, right? So this is where we were, and in this particular area that we were in, we began to prosper because we had a leg up. We were in the most idealistic place at the time. Mm-hmm. Let's flip over to Exodus 1.
Pick up where we left off?
No, we don't need that anymore.
Oh, okay.
Let's go to Exodus chapter 1. Oh, I'm sorry, Exodus chapter 1 and verse 8.
Okay, come. The book of Exodus chapter 1 and verse 8. Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
So then there was a king, a pharaoh, if you will, that came up, and the word knew doesn't mean he didn't know him. When you look up that word, it literally means he didn't respect him. He took no regard to this man. He said, I don't give a damn who Joseph was here. He ain't here no, he dead now. He ain't here no more. So there was a new king or a new pharaoh in Egypt, and he didn't respect Israel. He didn't respect the Israelites. He didn't respect everything that Joseph did in that time, right? Read.
Verse 9, and he said unto his people, behold, the people of the children of Israel are more and mightier than we.
So he's sitting there tripping like, man, this is our land. And these cats is visitors. He said, but they outshining us right now. They growing on us. They stronger than us. They're more in number than we are. Read.
Come on, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also unto our enemies and fight against us, and so get them up out of the land.
So it said we got to figure out a way to get them the hell up out of here. He said because they growing right now, and you know, Egypt, we a powerhouse. Somebody gonna come and try to take over eventually, and with everything that they doing, we seeing that they growing and we kind of stagnated or we shrinking. They gonna mess around and side with the enemies, and they gonna overthrow us. They gonna kill us. We gotta figure out how to put a stop to this now, right? So it said let's try to figure out let's see what we gonna do. We gonna deal wisely with them. We gonna get them out of the land of Goshen. We're gonna try to remove them out of this area because right now they have an advantage on us. So let's try to remove them from that and get them out of this particular area of the land because right now we in trouble. They in the spot, they in the place to be right now. And all they doing is continuing to grow because you got to think about it. They ain't got a care in the world right now. They flourishing. Let's have more babies. Hell, let's continue to build our empire. That's the thought process. It's like the more that we have, the more we can give, the more we can continue on our legacy. So we gonna continue to multiply like baby's kids, right? So it says, lest they multiply, and it come to pass that when there falleth out any war, they join also our enemies and fight against us. So get them up out of the land. So they said, let's get them up out of Goshen, right? Verse 11.
Therefore, they did set over them taskmasters to afflict them with their burdens.
So this is what they decided to do. You know what? Y'all was flourishing for the longest. Y'all was doing well. But we're gonna go ahead and drop the hammer on you. We're gonna make it real difficult, real frustrating. We're gonna put y'all into some bondage, right? Read.
And they built for Pharaoh treasure cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew.
So it said the more that they did to us, the more difficult they made life for us. It's kind of like what we do today in America. It's like, I mean, we get home from a long day of work, more than likely we need to relieve some stress. Yeah, probably end up pregnant from that. It is what it is. We don't die, we multiply. So no matter what you do to us, we're going to keep on having babies. It says, so they couldn't stop us from doing that. Read on.
And they were grieved because of the children of Israel.
So it said, damn, we can't do nothing. We literally can't stop them from growing. We cannot, they continue to, whether they going through it or they got it all, they going to continue to grow. Read.
Verse 13. And the Egyptians made their children of Israel to serve with rigor. And they made their lives bitter with hard bondage, in mortar and in brick, and in all manner of service in the field. All their service wherein they made them serve was with rigor.
So the scriptures show you this is when we get into, the actual bondage of Israel. And so it's telling you they treated us like slaves, like chattel, so to speak. It was like they made not there's a difference between being an indentured servant, being a serf, and being a slave. It said they worked us with rigor. They worked us like we would work an ox. They treated us just like when you read about the conquest of the Spaniards, and they literally worked people to death. That's how they worked us. They was beating us if we fell short on what do you call it? On the quota. Because then when you continue to read on, when Moses came back and we were still enslaved, and he went to talk to Pharaoh, and he said, yo, my people are crying. The Lord said, let my people go. Pharaoh said, to hell with that. I ain't letting nobody go. Matter of fact, y'all got so much damn time to go worship y'all God. Hey, all of the overseers, come here. From now on, don't go get they mud, they mortar, nothing for them. They need to go get it, because for some odd reason, they got all of this time now that they want to start worshiping. They want to worship their God. It says, so you make sure to go tell them you ain't getting that for them no more. They need to go get it themselves, and they better still meet my quota, or it's going to be an issue. So that's how we was getting work. Let's flip over. So I want to deal with the timeline. And so there's two time periods that are most noted as it pertains to, this is specifically the Exodus, and we're going to work backwards. So there's two particular time periods. The early date, which is the one furthest back, was approximately 1445 BC. The later date for the Exodus was approximately 1290 BC, and you can find this on Gordon.edu. So it's the university's website. And give me Acts chapter 7. So here we see this was the time of the Exodus. And so the reason why we're getting this is to get the time period in which we were actually in bondage, in slavery, we're getting this so that we can see approximately what time period we were actually in bondage. Because this is specifically just showing you the dates that we have for the Exodus, when we finally got up and said, we ain't dealing with this no more. So give me Exodus chapter 7, read verse 23.
The book of Acts chapter 7, verse 23. And when he was full 40 years old.
So this is talking about Moses.
It came into his heart to visit his brethren, the children of Israel. And seeing one of them suffer wrong, he defended him, and avenged him that was oppressed, and smote the Egyptian. For he supposed his brethren would have understood how that God by his hand would deliver them, but they understood not. And the next day he showed himself unto them as they strove, and would have set them at one again, saying, Sirs, ye are brethren, why do ye wrong one to another? But he that did his neighbor wrong thrust him away, saying, Who made thee a ruler and a judge over us? Wilt thou kill me as thou didst the Egyptian yesterday? Then fled Moses at this saying, and was a stranger in the land of Midian, where he begat 2 sons. And when 40 years were expired, there appeared to him in the wilderness of Mount Sinai an angel of the Lord in a flame of fire in a bush.
So we see here that Moses was 40 years old when he finally came down to talk to his people, or when the Most High put the Spirit on him to talk to his people, right? Now, we had been going through bondage. We were already enslaved by the time Moses was born, but we weren't enslaved that long. So give or take, maybe at most, probably 50 years. Then Moses comes on the scene, right? So Moses was 40, and that's when he smote the Egyptian. It says, and when Moses was full 40 years old.
In verse 23.
Okay. Okay, no. So 23, 30 is going to tell you something different. So verse 23, it says, and when he was full 40 years old, so when Moses was 40 years old, it came onto him to visit his brothers. After he smote the Egyptian, while he was 40, he ran off into the land of Midian, and he stayed there 40 years. So at this point, when Moses comes back, he's 80, right? And do I need this? I don't need this right now. And so we're going to deal with basic math for dating the Egyptian captivity, not the Exodus, but the captivity. So approximately 1445 was when we left. It was the actual Exodus. Add 80 years, because the way that BC works, the further away you go, the bigger the numbers get. It's not the same as AD. So we would add 80 years to that 1445, and we would get that the actual captivity of Israel, because we were in Egypt long before that, but we actually became slaves in Egypt approximately 1525 BC. That's if you're going by the later date, which would ultimately make sense, and we'll get to it and I'll show you. The earlier date. Now the later date would be, where are you? Approximately 1290 BC. Oh, I wrote that wrong. I'm sorry. It was supposed to be 1209. Hold on, let me go back because I think I wrote that in wrong. No, it is 1290. Excuse me. So 1290 BC. I did something incorrect here. I can sit here and admit that. Give me a second. Oh, okay, yeah. I totally did that backwards. So disregard that. So I'll just read it for you. So 1290 BC plus 80 years would have given you approximately 1370 BC is when the scholars say the earlier captivity or the Exodus would have occurred. So you have two different dates for the Exodus. There's a later date and there's an earlier date. And if we end up getting into an actual lesson about the Exodus, I will get, I guess, more detail in that. But pretty much the earlier date is where you find evidence of the Exodus. You find a lot of archaeological evidence that correlates with what is written in the scriptures. The later date, which is around 1290, you don't find any of that, which is why people say that the Exodus is a fairy tale. So the issue is there's a discrepancy in the time period that it happened, but there is approximately 200 or 300 years earlier, you find every single archaeological evidence that lines up with every single event in the scriptures. Mm-hmm. But if we end up having a class on the Exodus, we'll actually go into that. I won't do all of that. But the approximate time period for our actual being captive in in Egypt, was approximately 1525 BC. So I want to get it's probably about 5 minutes from this documentary called The Patterns of Evidence, the Exodus. And it's going to more so get into the more specifics of the time period. So let me get out of here. Yeah, it's plugged in. Give me a second. Where's the audio check? It's not on Netflix. I have it on Amazon. It shouldn't be running with the HDMI now? Nah. Oh, that's weird.
Tell him to mute the line real quick.
Mute the what? Mute the line?
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, mute the line real quick, Yash.
It is.
Oh, he said it is. All right, solid. So let's get to it. Let me blow this up real quick. Oh, that's not. Hey, where's the sound? Where's the sound? You don't see the video? Oh, that's weird. Hey, Yash, take me to the actual screen.
What you mean?
Because they're saying that they only see the PowerPoint right now, but I'm out of the PowerPoint at the moment. I'm
Put it on you?
No. Put it on. It's still on the computer, right? Yeah, it should be on the desktop. I don't need it on the PowerPoint right now.
Maybe exit out of the
I was about to say, that's on you. That's not on me.
Yeah, exit out of the presenter view on PowerPoint.
Should be out of it.
Yeah, it's still in presenter view, I think.
Open up for me. 1 second. That's that. How about that down there? How is that coming out? Don't do it like that. This is what you see in Bakwash?
Yeah, that's what she said.
Oh, you see us right now? Oh, you put the thing on us? Okay, let me try to exit out of this.
Right now, it's just showing the patterns of evidence
And it's
for your side.
Okay. Do you don't see the
There we
video?
go. There we go.
Is up?
Oh, yeah, we good.
Okay,
We good.
perfect. Okay.
Other good scholars maintain that you don't need to change Egypt's timeline in order to see evidence for the Exodus. James Hoffmeyer believes textual clues in the Bible point to the Exodus happening at the 1250 BC Ramesses Day. Bryant Wood and Charles Ayling believe the Exodus occurred around 1450 BC, using the conventional dates for Egypt and Canaan. They believe a case can be made for Israelites living in Egypt prior to that time, and later Israel appearing as a nation in Canaan. So an exodus of some kind must have taken place.
But the only place that I saw a pattern matching all the steps was in the Middle Kingdom, not the New Kingdom. And if that's not a coincidence, it would require some kind of major change. Either the Exodus happened long before 1450, or the dates for Egypt's timeline are off.
The debate over the dates of ancient history is intensifying. While the conclusions of those who support major adjustments differ in their details, they're all of the same mind that these things are worth investigating, and that chronology is not yet fixed and is not yet final. Researchers like Roland Bimson believe the main problem lies in these lesser-known dark periods of Egypt's past. They think scholars have miscalculated their lengths, causing distortions in the dates for everything before them. The biggest suspect is this very long third dark period, which new information suggests has been overinflated by centuries. If it were reduced, the history of Egypt would need to move forward in time.
For many years, I was intimidated by the giant of Egypt's dating. But what made me take a second look was when I learned that it's been necessary to insert gaps into the histories of all the surrounding civilizations in order to match the dating of Egypt's third dark period. Yet the archaeology of these cultures does not seem to support such gaps. Something was wrong.
So basically what they're saying is that, well, first they said that they even have little conferences, you know, the scholars are meeting up with one another, and they literally said, well, it's not 100% final that this is, you know, the date of the Exodus. And then they continued on to say that one of the biggest issues that lie here is that third dark period that a lot of scholars feel like have been inflated by centuries. So it probably, that third dark period was more than likely not as long as people are trying to make it be. But here's the thing. Is it a coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. Because the thing is, if they can do that and get you to believe that this is the proper chronological order, and we don't see any proof of the Exodus in the time that they're saying it was supposed to happen, well, guess what? We can say that the whole foundation of your people is fake, because y'all was never in Egypt. There was never a Passover. Maybe you can say there was maybe an Abraham or something, but that's about as far as you can go. Israel was clearly fake, because you can't even find them where they supposedly started off at as slaves. So I don't, is it a coincidence? I don't know. I don't think it is, but, you know, so the scholars started to, you know, have conventions and have meetings and be like, you know what? This may be a part of the problem. So they said the third dark period had been inflated by a couple of centuries, so 500-600 years or whatever the case is. and that pushes the rest of chronology out of whack, right? And then so they said they even, to try to corroborate the stories, they said we went to different countries or different kingdoms at that time. We went to their particular chronology to see if any of this information lined up with their stuff. And it said these gaps were too big. We couldn't find anything that supported what they referred to as the popular Exodus period. So it just seemed like BS. But the thing is, because most people believe it, you have what's called the majority that believe it, we're just going to hold it as fact, even though they even say it's called the Exodus theory. So the timeline is a theory, but they hold it as a fact. So let's finish this video up.
What might history look like if the dark periods were adjusted the way that some scholars believe the evidence demands?
What's not changing is the Bible timeline, because that's not affected by it. If you're changing the Egyptian timeline, you're moving it against the Bible timeline. So all of a sudden, things that were not in the right time period between the two are suddenly lining up in a different way.
So the scholar basically just said, he said, now, if we go ahead and deflate some of that that third dark period by this particular, this particular amount of years or centuries, it says, look how everything lines up. It says everything that you read in the Bible, you find every single thing from the after we left Israel, and this is actually a really good documentary. I definitely would encourage everyone to go watch this. But he said, if you go ahead and you push the Egyptian timeline up, every single thing from the wall of Jericho falling, the whole conquest of Joshua and his men, the actual Exodus when it happened, the plague of the firstborn being killed, everything lines up. You see every historical thing that was said in the scriptures that would happen in that time, you can actually, archaeology actually proves it. If you are open-minded enough to push the timeline up and not sit there and say, well, it said that, this was the particular time that they had. You can't prove that that's what it was saying. You absolutely cannot. But a lot of people believe that, and all that's going to do is keep all of that proof that actually shows, damn, there was some type of Exodus at some point in time. Yeah, but it wasn't in 1200, so that biblical Exodus is fake. Well, maybe your timeline is just off. So it literally says, if you deflate this particular time and you push the timeline up a little bit on Egypt, it lines up with everything else, including what was written in the scriptures.
And that's the exciting bit, because that's when we suddenly start to find evidence for the biblical story.
It's startling to think how significant this could be, because chronology, the dates assigned to these events, is the thing being used to convince the world that the Bible is just a fairy tale. But look at the pattern.
So he just said it. He said the fact that they have this chronological timeline and that it doesn't line up, this is what they're holding on to say that the Bible is fiction, to say that the Bible's a fairy tale. So they're saying, well, all I'm saying is it may not be in the time frame that you thought it would be, but hell, there wasn't everything that was written from Exodus to Joshua. We see it in the archaeology. It's just a couple of centuries earlier than you thought.
Evidence matching Joseph and the early Israelites' arrival in Egypt, their tremendous multiplication, their descent into slavery, the judgment and collapse of Egypt, the deliverance and exodus of the Semitic population, and finally in Canaan, evidence matching the conquest of the Promised Land. I know there's a lot of disagreement over the dating, but what strikes me is that if you put all the dates to the side for a moment, what emerges from the archaeology is this pattern that matches the Bible every step of the way. And doesn't that deserve to be taken seriously? But for now, those who hold to established conventions will not allow these connections to be made.
So we'll stop it there. He's basically saying those people who said, well, this is what the founding archaeological fathers said. It was in this time. He said those people that aren't willing to let go of convention, they won't allow that timeline to be moved up. So according to everybody else, yeah, the Exodus didn't happen, even though we find all of every single piece of evidence in a different time, in a different century. It's all there, but it's just not in the time that we expect it to be. So it never happened. It's not real, right? So yeah, approximately anywhere between 1450 and about 1500 is when the Exodus would have occurred. So 80 years prior to that is when we were in captivity. So anywhere between 1525 and about 1580, just before 1600 BC, we would have been, held captives or been, enslaved in Egypt. Excuse me. So let's go to the Antiquities of the Jews by Flavius Josephus. So this will give us a little insight on the. I'm sorry, say it again.
Put it in presenter's view.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Can you see it, Bukwash?
Come.
Okay. So we're going to get a little more insight because one of the most difficult things to do. I'm sorry, it's a piece of paper.
I was about to look for it.
No, I actually have it
Oh, okay.
marked. Is it?
Yep.
One of the most difficult things to do is to actually find the information. Here it is. Chapter 9. Find the actual information as to what was going on in the time of our slavery in Egypt. It's already difficult enough to find proof that this was the case, aside from, of course, biblical websites, but to try to find it on a .edu or a university's website is dang near impossible. Reason being is because if they start showing you this stuff and showing you that it's true, well, damn, we got to question whether or not the whole Bible is true. So if the Exodus is real, the Israelites is real, these prophecies were real, everything that was written in this book, we can archaeologically prove. We see certain prophecies being unfolded, because right now people can just chalk it up as, it's a coincidence. I mean, I've actually heard the argument, well, you got the powers that be that are making prophecies come true, meaning they've read this book and now they're just pretty much playing puppet master to make all these things appear as if they're coming true. And I'm like, damn, y'all got every other excuse except, you know what? The Most High was not playing. He said, these things is going to happen if y'all don't get right, and these things are now happening. Every other excuse but to give credit to the Most High. But it's very difficult to find this information, because if we start actually seeing it, if we start finding the proof, a lot of people is going to have to pick a side at that point. Right now, people are in a place where they're saying, well, I mean, if I don't know, if I'm not 100% sure, I'm agnostic. I don't know. I can't prove it or disprove it. So long as they can hold on to that, they don't have to hold themselves accountable. And people are happy in that limbo, so long as they don't have to hold themselves accountable. So it's very difficult to find this information, but all praise to the Most High, you find bits and pieces everywhere. So we're going to get an excerpt from the Antiquities of the Jews by Flavius Josephus, Book 2 and Chapter 9. And for those that don't know who Josephus was actually a leader, I believe he was a general at the time, or a captain, around the time of the siege of 70 AD. He was a Jew, and he was fighting against the Romans during the siege. They ended up clearly they took over Jerusalem, as everyone knows. That's why it's called the siege of 70 AD. They captured Josephus, and he ended up becoming one. He moved his way up on their side and became a captain or a general in the Roman army. And he has a lot of insight of our history, of course, because he was an Israelite. He was in Jerusalem, you know, even prior to when we got taken over. So he writes a lot. When you look at this book, he writes a lot about our history, a little more in depth. The scriptures give you an overview. The scriptures sometimes go into detail. Josephus gives you a little more detail than that, a little more in-depth explanation than that. So let's read book 2, chapter 9, and we'll start at verse 1.
Verse 1. Now what happened that the Egyptians grew delicate and lazy, as to painstaking, and gave themselves up to other pleasures, and in particular to the love of gain.
So this is talking about when we read in Exodus 1, we were flourishing, and the Egyptians were flourishing, clearly. It said, but they got lazy. They got comfortable. They got complacent. Read.
They also became very ill-affected towards the Hebrews, as touched with envy at their prosperity.
So they was hating on, we all winning, but they was hating on us for winning. Read.
For when they saw how the nation of Israelites flourished and were become eminent already in plenty of wealth, which they had acquired by their virtue and natural love of labor, they thought their increase was to their own detriment.
So they was hating on us because we was putting in work. It said we had a natural love for labor. Again, we were hurt. We were shepherds. Being a shepherd is laborious in itself. On top of the people that were husbandmen, that were doing husbandry, we worked. And they was hating on us because we love to work. Right? Read.
And having, in length of time, forgotten the benefits they had received from Joseph, particularly the crown being now come into another family.
So it said, that's so cold, because we do this in Israel too. They forgot where the hell they came from. If it wasn't for us, Egypt wouldn't have been nothing. It said, but, and having in length of time, so after a while, it's basically saying after a while, they forgot the benefits that they received from our forefather. So they hating on us because we putting in all this work. Y'all flourishing too. But I think they forgot why they was flourishing. I guess they figured we did all of this. So we could sit back and we can kick our feet up and not giving credit where credit is due. So they hating on us. Read.
They became very abusive to the Israelites and contrived many ways of afflicting them. For they enjoyed them to cut a great number of channels for the river and to build walls for their cities and ramparts.
So not only was we building pyramids, with all we read about is the mortar and brick and us building the pyramids. It said that they had us digging out channels so the river can flow through certain areas that they wanted, to cultivate. And then it says, and we built walls for their cities and ramparts. So we were actually building up, a hedge, a boundary, a barrier for Egypt as well. Not just the pyramids, right? Read.
That they might restrain the river and hinder its waters from stagnating upon its running over in its banks. They set them also to build pyramids.
So it said that we were building basically like a moat. So they didn't want the water to go past this particular point. We didn't want it to overflow over here or over there, right? And then it said, and on top of what we all know, we were building pyramids for them, right? Read.
And by all this wore them out and forced them to learn all sorts of mechanical arts and to accustom themselves to hard labor.
So again, we already loved to labor, but we were husbandmen, we were shepherds. It said they taught us to get into the mechanical arts. You're going to learn architecture. You're going to learn to build. Even though we didn't really care about that. We worried about these things. This is what we do. We know how to keep our cattle. We know how to raise our cattle. We know how to do agriculture. And we know that this is very beneficial because you're going to always need the animal, whether it's for clothing or food, and you're going to always need agriculture, mainly for food, right? So it said this is what we knew, but they put us to work. So they was hating on us because we started prospering just like they was prospering. I guess because we was visitors, they figured they should be above us. It shouldn't be no equal. How y'all winning like we winning? How y'all shining like we shining? forgetting that they wouldn't even be shining if it wasn't for Joseph. Joseph went and talked to Pharaoh and said, yo, this is what your dream is saying. And if he didn't do that, Egypt would have been, they would have expired. But they forgot about that. So it said they put us to work. We had to build moats. We built pyramids, and did a number of things, and had to accustom ourselves. What does it say?
Hard labor.
To hard labor and mechanical arts, right? Read.
And 400 years did they spend under these afflictions, for they strove one against the other which should get the mastery, the Egyptians desiring to destroy the Israelites by these labors.
Wait. Read that again. It says, for they strove what?
For they strove one against the other which should get the mastery.
Nah, I should get this job. Nah, this job is for me. Nah, they was fighting over being a damn slave. Don't that sound familiar?
Sound real familiar.
Ain't that cold?
In modern day Egypt.
We was shepherds. We had our own land. We was living a life. Luscious in Goshen. We got put into bondage, and we started fighting over, I want to do this slave job. No, I want to do this slave job. What the hell is going on? I want to be under this master. I want to be under this master. Instead of, what the hell? We going back to Goshen where it was cracking, where we was good. But we wanted to be slaves. Ain't that something? Fighting over which person will get the ability to learn this particular trade that they're forcing us to learn. Read on.
The Egyptians desiring to destroy the Israelites by these labors, and the Israelites desiring to hold out to the end under them.
So now this was a good thing. We wasn't just giving up. So the Egyptians was like, man, we're going to wear their ass out. We're going to give them all of this work, and they're going to eventually die. Israel said, nah, we're going to put in this work. We're going to do what we need to do, but we're going to continue to flourish while we're doing it. You know, we ain't sweating. We ain't going to die. This is easy. You know, kind of like back in the day when we be in the fields just singing to one another to get through the day. That's what we was doing. Read
Paragraph 2.
Yeah, paragraph 2.
Paragraph 2. While the affairs of the Hebrews were in this condition, a particular occasion offered itself to the Egyptians, which made them more solicitous for the extinction of our nation.
So it said that something had happened that made them want even more for the Hebrews to be extinct, right? Read.
One of those sacred scribes who are very sagacious in foretelling future events truly.
So this is now they're telling you the event that made the Egyptians want even more for Israel to just hurry up and die. Everybody die. Read.
Told the king that about this time there would a child be born to the Israelites who, if he were reared, would bring the Egyptian dominion low and would raise the Israelites, that he would excel all men in virtue and obtain a glory that would be remembered through all ages.
So now that actually did come to pass. Again, in the scriptures, it got straight to the point. It didn't talk about a prophet that came and spoke about or anything like that. It just jumped straight into it. It's talking about Moses, right? Read.
Which thing was so feared by the king that, according to this man's opinion, he commanded that they should cast every male child which was born to the Israelites into the river and destroy it.
So, actually, let's get that. Verse 16.
The book of Exodus, chapter 1 and verse 16.
Excuse me, 15.
15. And the king of Egypt spake to the Hebrew midwives, of which the name of the one was Shiphrah, and the name of the other Puah. Mm-hmm. And he said, when ye do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live. Mm-hmm. But the midwives feared the Most High, and did not as the king of Egypt commanded them, but saved the men children alive. And the king of Egypt called for the midwives and said unto them, why have ye done this thing, and have saved the men children alive? And the midwives said unto the Pharaoh, because the Hebrew women are not as the Egyptian women, for they are lively, and are delivered ere the midwives come in unto them.
Let's drop down to verse 22.
Verse 22, and Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive.
So right here, Josephus is giving us a more in-depth explanation, but that's pretty much what happened. So he said a scribe foretold that someone was going to come, and if he's brought up the right way, he's going to shake some things up in Egypt, and he's going to mess up Egypt's empire, right? So the Pharaoh was like, we can't have that. We gotta figure out a way to deal with this situation. So he was like, well, we're just going to kill all the boys. Why not? We can just do that. Let's kill all the men. The man-child. Let's go ahead and just kill all of them, right? And then specifically it said, read that again, where it said to place them in the water.
Josephus?
In the Josephus, yeah.
Okay, where? Which thing was so feared by the king, excuse me 1 second, which thing was so feared by the king that according to this man's opinion, he commanded that they should cast every male child which is born to the Israelites into the river and destroy it.
So it said that he was so worried about it, like, man, he's going to ruin our kingdom. Nah, you know what? Just to alleviate the situation, I mean, it is what it is. We're just going to kill all the boys that's born, we're going to kill them all. Just throw them in the river, right? Read.
That besides this, the Egyptian midwives should watch the labors of the Hebrew women and observe what is born. For those were the women who were enjoined to do the office of midwives. To them, and by reason of their relation to the king, would not transgress his commands. He enjoined also that if any parent should disobey him and venture to save their male children alive, they and their families should be destroyed.
So this was a part of the issue too. It said, and let somebody, mama or daddy, say, no, don't kill my kid. All you guys die. Everybody dies. This is what we was going through during slavery. So we was already they done already took us out of our natural element, started making us do other work that we were not accustomed to. Then one of the scribes ends up telling the Pharaoh, hey, man, there's going to be a kid that's born to those people down there. And if he's raised up proper, if we don't get a hold of him first, it's going to be an issue here. He's going to ruin us. So now they're killing all of our young boys. All of the men children that are born are now being put to death. And Pharaoh said, and I dare anybody to stop it. If you tell my midwife no and she trying to get rid of that baby, everybody in that house dies. Mommy, daddy, your sister, everybody dies. So this is what we were going through. Read on.
This was a severe affliction indeed to those that suffered it, not only as they were deprived of their sons, and while they were the parents themselves, they were obliged to be subservient to the destruction of their own children.
Now imagine that. We talk about it in recent history, but imagine you having a child and having to allow them to be killed and be subservient, meaning be compliant to what they're saying. Hey, it's just business. The king did say, you just happen to get the short end of the stick. You got a son. We got to kill him. Imagine as a mama how you going to feel. And I'm pretty sure I'm the exact same. I got 2 daughters, and just something as simple as DPSS coming to say, you know what, we're gonna take your kids. No, you're not. I can promise you're not, because at that point everybody dies. So think about how they felt. I gotta just let this happen. This was literally how severe it's pretty much the same thing. And now you can kind of understand what Deuteronomy 28:68 was saying. Thou shalt go back into Egypt again with ships. Go through the exact same thing. Taking your kids away. Killing certain of it. Separating your houses. Forcing you to do work that you were not accustomed to. Literally trying to work you until you were dead. It's literally what's going on here. Read on.
But as it was to be supposed to tend to the extirpation of their nation, while upon the destruction of their children.
So it said this was all done to try to expire the nation. The extirpation means to destroy the people, right, Reed?
And their own gradual dissolution, the calamity would become very hard and inconsolable to them. And this was the ill state they were in. But no one can be too hard for the purpose of the Most High. Though he contrived 10,000 subtle devices for that end, for this child, whom the sacred scribe foretold, was brought up and concealed from the observers appointed by the king. And he that foretold him did not mistake in the consequences of his preservation, which were brought to pass after the manner following.
So it said we're done with that.
Okay, got it.
So it said, and you can bring the you can put the camera on us, Yash. So Josephus was saying this was everything that we was going through. They was trying to work us to death. They was putting us in uncharted waters, doing things that we had never done. Then they started separating families and killing us. And we just had to take it on the chin. But the scripture said, but ain't nothing too hard for the Most High. It says, so with all of that, with them trying to destroy all of the young men, they missed this one. They missed the one that they was trying to get this whole time. The Most High concealed Moses from the rest of them. Most High put it on Pharaoh's daughter's heart to say, man, this is a beautiful kid. I know it's a Hebrew. I can tell it's a Hebrew. But something about him, I can't let that happen to him.
Hidden in plain sight, boy.
In plain sight. And so, Miriam, or Moses' big sister, ran over and said, hey, do you want me to get somebody to nurse the little kid for you? She said, yeah, go get me a Hebrew woman. So literally, Miriam went and got Moses' mama. So she kept Moses. She raised Moses into a certain time. I don't believe it tells you exactly when they went into the house of Pharaoh, but it was pretty much the same thing. You know, like how white people used to do us. Hey, take care of my kid, breastfeed my child up until this particular age. That's what the Pharaoh's daughter was doing. Take care of this kid for me. The cool thing, though, was at least her mama got paid. It said, and I'll give you your wages. So at least there was a little more heart in the Egyptians. It said, I'll pay you to take care of this kid until this particular time. And then after that, he would go into the house of Pharaoh and live amongst Pharaoh. I think that's the end of the slideshow. So in short, we see approximately what time we were enslaved in Egypt. We also see to what extent we were enslaved in Egypt. It was actually, because it's so important, let's go to Deuteronomy 28.
Okay.
Because a lot of people, we read it over and over and over. It's, yeah, it's just talking about bondage. It's talking about bondage. No. Look at the parallel. Give me 28:68. I'm in the wrong book. Give me Deuteronomy 28. Nah, I wasn't that bad. That was in Exodus. Deuteronomy 28:68.
The book of Deuteronomy, chapter 28 and verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships.
So it said we was going to go back into this type of hard bondage. We was going to go back to a place where we was doing things we was not accustomed to. We was literally being worked to death. We was going to go back to a place where our families would be separated. We was going to go back to a place where literally our kids was being killed and we couldn't do a damn thing about it. It said, I'm going to take you back to that Egypt. But this time you're going to go on ships. There was only one bondage that was synonymous to that scripture. Take me over to, actually, I don't need to finish that. Take me over to Revelation 11. And it says, and there you shall be sold to your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. It said we was going to be sold to our enemies. I think that may be the only thing that at least we don't see here when we read about it in history. That's the one thing we don't see, is that, oh, we were actually sold, which I'm sure we probably were in this particular time. But that's the only difference, at least right here. But they was separating families. They was working us to death. They was treating us like property. This ain't no different. Revelations 11 and verse 8.
The book of Revelation, chapter 11 and verse 8. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt.
So it said our people will be going through an affliction, a tribulation, and it specifies we would literally be killed in the streets in this place that's called spiritual Sodom and spiritual Egypt. Deuteronomy 28:68 said that was referring to a spiritual Egypt. So the Egyptian captivity here is the exact same as the Egyptian captivity back then. It's you can see the correlation between the two. And it's so cold. And I'm going to show you something even funnier. As bad as it is here, how many of our people are like, it ain't that bad. Man, shit, I'm balling. I ain't going through it. I love it. Y'all niggas in captivity.
Choose to be a slave, huh?
How? Yeah, I'm a good nigga. I love it here. I get eats. How often do we see that? How many people in the truth that are now freed from this want to go back to Egypt?
Too many.
But is that something new? Let's go to Numbers. I'm going to show you something.
Man, it's the Matrix.
Let me show you something in the book of Numbers. So cold. Everything that we went through. Everything that we went through, we just saw the bondage that they put us in, how hard they made it for us. It's the same thing here. When we come into the truth, we like, man, we're freed. And for some reason, some people want to go back. Israel did that same foolishness back then. Numbers 11. This may give you a good laugh how much this parallels with what's going on today. How much of spiritual Egypt this really is. Like, we don't just make this stuff up. Start at verse 5.
Okay. The book of Numbers, chapter 11 and verse 5. We remember the fish which we did eat in Egypt freely. The cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. But now our soul is dried away. There is nothing at all beside this manna before our eyes.
Read.
And the manna was a coriander seed, and the color thereof as the color of bdellium. And the people went about and gathered it and ground it in mills and beat it in a mortar and baked it in pans and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was as the taste of fresh oil.
Read.
And when the dew fell upon the camp in the night, the manna fell upon it.
Read.
Then Moses heard the people weep throughout their families, every man in the door of his tent. And the anger of the Lord was kindled greatly. Moses also was displeased.
So literally, to hell with everything that we endured. We used to eat good. It wasn't that bad. You know how many people come into this damn truth and do the same thing? You know how many people eyes get open and they say, man, it ain't that bad. I mean, we could do this, we could do that. I mean, y'all tripping. Like, I mean, do you even, I mean, I used to believe it, but I don't really believe it anymore. Because you want to go back to Egypt. Because you want to go back to captivity. You want to be a mental slave again. You happy living in your ignorance. But again, this ain't nothing new. Literally in the book of Numbers, we just saw the, one second. We just saw the Lord part the Red Sea.
Man.
If not, at least a few years ago by now, he parted the Red Sea. He saved you from dying. He pulled you out of slavery. When you was hungry, he fed you. Because remember, he gave us the manna in Exodus too. When you wanted meat, he gave you quail. And they said this manna was fire. Bread from the heavens. Literally out of this world. Heaven bread. Heavenly bread.
Ooh, need some of
But
that.
y'all whining and complaining. I want to go back to Egypt. I miss it in Egypt. We got his man out here. Oh, we got his man, and as you read on, we got this meat that he gave us. But we had fish. We had cucumbers. We was eating melons. We had onions and garlic. And we had so much in Egypt. To hell with the fact that we were slaves. To hell with the fact that they was literally working us to death, separating our families, killing our kids. We got selective memory. And it wasn't that bad. I mean, some people died, we got worked to death, and they wasn't paying us no more, and, we was once up here, we was down here now. I mean, but it wasn't that bad. I said we go back. Because this nigga Moses is tripping. He talking about, we get this little bit of bread. Bread? We had all type of vegetables and agriculture and vegetation when we was in Egypt. Listen to the correlation, how badly a lot of us even today want to go back to Egypt. Again, that's literally why the scripture's saying you're going to go back to Egypt again with ships. Mm-hmm. You're going to go to this same type of bondage, go through this same type of bondage. You're going to be crying again, trying to get back there when you get freed. Spiritual Egypt. Cold game. The Egyptian captivity was back then, and the Egyptian captivity is today. So cold. It's disturbing. It's heartbreaking. You still have something to say?
Nah, man, go ahead. Hey, that was man.
It's really sit here and meditate on that. Mm-hmm. When you see what we went through during the time, because again, the scriptures is very concise. It gets to the point. It don't like it. The Most High, you read in the scriptures in Revelation where it talks about the earth helped the woman being Israel. Literally, things started coming up out of the earth that started to enlighten us. To this day, there's so much archaeology that's popping up. It's overwhelming proof that yes, Israel was real. This was a real nation of people. A lot of this stuff did happen. No, it ain't these fake bootleg white Jews either. Look at the pictures. Damn. Matter of fact, take me to the PowerPoint real quick. I think I have it in my email. Can you see the laptop? Can you see the screen? Okay. Let's drop him out here. Okay, let me just open it here then. There we go. What color is these people?
Shoot, they look white to everybody else.
Clearly, right? These white folks.
Apparently.
And what's so cold is they tried to smudge out the afros that they had. Come on, look. You don't understand my frustration right now. Yeah. It's not. It don't look. If you see the outlines, it's still black. They just got most of it off. Hold on real quick. Let me go to the next one. Real quick. Where's that other picture? Damn, I wish I could blow this one up. What color are these people?
Press Control plus on there. You might be able to blow it up.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
What color are these people? They not pale. Understand my frustration talking about the Egyptian captivity, because we are literally today living in the Egyptian captivity. This is spiritual Egypt. Our people, what we went through back then, we went through just a few hundred years ago. Mm-hmm. We still endure a lot of it today. It's just more systematic. Yeah, they can't just snatch us up and say, hey, bring your ass to my field. No, what do now? They systematically create a bunch of laws that are going to not go in our favor, put us in jail, because the 13th Amendment states that unless you are prosecuted, unless you are incarcerated, no man can be a slave. That's me paraphrasing it. That's not word for word, but it's me paraphrasing it. So the only way that an individual can be placed into free labor to actually be a slave is if they're incarcerated. Supposedly, we only make up about 20% of the population. Care to take a guess what the percentage is for the prison population that we make up?
What is it, Art?
It's not that high. That would be amazing. As of it was the NAACP did did the statistics, and a few years back, both black and Latinos make up about 70%.
Yep.
I think, to be more accurate, I think it was 65%.
It was 65.
65%, but we as a whole only make up about 30% of the population. Black and brown, maybe 40.
And to put that in numbers, that's what they speculate about 40 million blacks, as opposed to about 160, I believe, quote unquote white folk. Just to put that in numbers so we can kind of understand, because
Yes.
a lot of us don't understand percentages.
Yeah,
but-
so 60 million black people in America, supposedly.
Right.
100 and how much?
About 40 million blacks and 120 to 160 million white folk.
Excuse me. Okay, so 40
Yeah.
million blacks. There are 3 times as many white people in America.
Mm-hmm.
But we are 3 times more likely, or shucks, probably even more than that, to be incarcerated. And all of the laws that are put in place as it pertains to the system and getting us trapped into the system, a lot of these laws are specifically targeted at us.
Yep.
To make it to where it's easier for us to go to jail, to make it to where we get a heavier sentence for a very similar crime. There's a bias against our people. So we're still enslaved. It's just done a little differently.
Right.
But before I venture off too far, again, Egyptian captivity, as we read, was not much different from what we're going through today. So with that, we can talk about this all night. With that, I'll end the lesson. Like I said, check out the documentary. It's called The Patterns of Evidence, The Exodus. You can rent it on YouTube. It's like $2. You can rent it if you have Amazon Video. I rented it on Amazon Video. It was like $2 or $3. I mean, if you're able to get that on, the way that you get it, then get it. But it's a really good documentary, and there's a lot of information in there. And for the individuals that swear up and down the Exodus is fake, the Israelites is fake, the Bible's a fiction book, this deals with a lot of archaeological evidence. And I remember years back, kind of when I first came into truth, like 2016, we were out dealing with some cats when we was in downtown LA. And a lot of the evidence in there shut up a lot of cats when we was out there. And it was even a young brother that told me, man, when I first came into truth, I watched that. That was one of the first videos I ever saw. And I was like, damn, this brother, that documentary helps. And I believe that it'll strengthen a lot of people's faith, because I know sometimes people have it in their mind like, man, is it real? Is it true? You know, what if? That's just the fact of the. It's the facts. Sometimes it'll literally pop in your head. What if it is fake? Well, let's get your faith solidified. Continue to research. The scripture states, study to show yourself approved. So go and do your research. But I definitely endorse that video. I encourage everyone to go watch it, that documentary. But with that, we're going to close it out. All praise to the Most High, Yahweh, in the name of His only begotten Son, Yahweh Shai. I pray that there was some edification for the people. And you guys look out for next week. We actually have, Stick to the Script is next week, right?
Nah.
The 13th?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So I guess the next class will be the Sabbath class. So y'all tune into this Friday Sabbath class. Brother Yatab is going to be pretty much carrying on from this particular lesson, going more in depth into Egyptian captivity. So it's going to be a hell of a class. So you guys tune in. So with that, we're going to send up these prayers and get out of here.